This is Kirk Walden, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Coffee with Kirk on the Pregnancy Help Podcast. And today we're going to do something, I guess what we do all the time is something a little different. We're actually going to talk about movies. But bear with me because I think when we talk about movies, they apply to what we do in pregnancy help ministries everywhere. Because what we do is we reach out to people in underdog positions and we see them come through to triumph in so many cases. And I want us to think about it from this perspective because I think sometimes we get caught up in the day-to-day, the struggles of the day-to-day, the challenges that we face, the people who come in and we go, oh my goodness, I do not know how this is going to be redeemed. I do not know the path forward here. And that's okay because every person who walks in the door of our center is a potential story of redemption. And I hope we can always see the potential in whoever comes in the door. But it is hard. It is hard. And that's why I want to go to movies today. Because over the last few weeks, our family has been watching movies together. And we've gone to the theater a couple of times and we've watched a lot of them at home. And Jen and I will sit down and say, hey, here's a movie that we watched years ago and we want you to watch it too. So we have a tough time sometimes coming to agreement because we've got two boys in the house. One of them's about 18, one of them's going to be 16 soon. And so they have different tastes than Jen and I do. But whenever I get a chance, I like to move toward the underdog stories of redemption, stories of triumph over the most difficult of circumstances. And as I think about it, I want to throw out a few movies that I like. And you may like them, you may not, but I want to talk about what it is in these movies that gets me. I think of a movie like Rudy, which I've seen too many times and probably won't see again. But the story of the kid, Rudy, who walked on at Notre Dame to play football and tried. And then in the end, I won't get to the end. In the end, there's triumph. In the end, there's a great moment in this movie. I love Rudy because it is a story of a person who struggles with their personal demons and with the challenge of doing something nobody thinks they can accomplish. So I love Rudy, and interestingly enough, I love horse movies. Three of them come to mind. One of them is Secretariat, which I always liked that movie, of the horse that won the Triple Crown. I believe it was 1973. But it's the story behind the story of how Secretariat got there and an owner who believed in that horse even against all odds. I love those stories. I think about Seabiscuit. I like that movie not only because it's an underdog story of both a jockey and a horse that was too small to be as fast as it was, but in the movie, there's actually a moment where they're at a hotel, the Huntington Hotel in Pasadena. This is a personal thing, but they're sitting outside the Huntington Hotel, and I think, wow, my grandfather was in Pasadena, and his job for basically his entire life was to be a painter at the Huntington Hotel. So that one takes me back a little bit. I'm thinking of another horse movie and cannot come up with it, so we'll just move on. I love a baseball movie too. Think about one, The Rookie, of the science teacher who ends up pitching in the major leagues. And again, a story of overcoming unbelievable odds, like The Underdog with Kurt Warner. I don't know how old that movie is. Even fictional movies like Facing the Giants by the Kendrick brothers of a little Christian high school football team and how the coach fought through all the frustration and people wanting to take his job and carried this team forward in faith. Love those type of movies. I don't know what movies you like, but these are the kind of movies that drive me. These are the kind of movies that when I'm down, when I'm struggling, I'll watch one of those movies kind of to get back on track and say, wait a minute, you may be down right now, but look at what happened in these movies. So they move me a little bit. Greatest speech I think I've ever heard, outside of maybe a stirring political speech or something like that, was in the movie Miracle with Kurt Russell, where he's coaching the 1980 U.S. hockey team. And I love that movie because I go back and I remember exactly where I was. I wasn't in front of a TV. I was at a high school basketball game when I found out that the U.S. had beaten the Russians in that amazing game for a bunch of amateur college players to beat a professional team from the Soviet Union in a hockey game, and how it changed really, it changed how we felt as a country. It changed our perspective back in 1980 before even it was in an election year, and yet we needed something as Americans. We needed something to hold on to because we were knocked down with inflation and so many economic struggles. We had hostages in Iran, but this one thing, this one moment in Lake Placid, New York, began to shift how Americans began to see themselves. And so a triumphant movie like that, or the movie Hoosiers with Gene Hackman, the late Gene Hackman, I think about that movie and I think about a guy who had been kicked to the curb by college basketball because of a terrible moment in his life. And yet he goes to this little high school to be their coach. Nobody in the town believes in him. There's a drunk that shows up who he makes an assistant coach. And the story of, again, triumph, of victory over all odds for this little town in Hickory, Indiana, to go as far as they did. And I won't give away everything, but it was an amazing movie. I'm afraid sometimes I do give away too much. Even fictional movies like Facing the Giants, the Kendrick Brothers movie, I think about that again, go back to it and say, you know what? People will look at that movie and they're going to see the actors and go, okay, they're not Academy Award-winning actors, but I think I cried 3 times during that movie, and I think, you know what? All you people out there with the Screen Actors Guild and the Academy Awards and everything, I hear what you're saying. Maybe these folks weren't trained by the grand poobahs of acting, but they put their heart in it, and that was enough for me, and it made me cry. There are a lot of great movies out there that don't make me cry, but this one did. So many great movies. You can go back to Rocky. I watched Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them until they got to so many Rockies I couldn't keep up with them all. But I watched those movies because every one of them was about an underdog moment. Every one of them was about somebody struggling with their inner battles and coming through and finding triumph on the other side. So yeah, I love movies. I even love movies where people don't win, like Cool Runnings with John Candy and about coaching the Jamaican bobsled team at the Olympics one year. Love those movies. You don't have to win. Hey, Rocky didn't win in his first attempt either. You don't have to see victory, but you still see triumph. You see overcoming odds. And I go back to who we are and what we do. Every person who walks in our door is facing something. She may be facing a past that she can't get rid of, maybe something that she decided years ago, and it's breaking her. She needs a rocky moment in her life. I think about those who come in who are in a broken relationship and find out they're pregnant, or a young couple that comes in, they have no idea what to do. It's a dad and a mom, but they're both teenagers. They've got nothing, and somehow they have to beat the odds. This is what you do. This is what you do on a regular basis. You step into their story and you begin to show them there is hope on the other side. You can do it. I'll never forget a guy at a banquet where I was speaking, and this young man stood up to tell his story. And as he did, I just watched his confidence begin to grow. And at one point he says, these people right here, they told me that I could not only be a dad, but I could be a great dad. I'd never had a dad, and they told me I could do it, and I'm going to do it. And he talked about the different things that he was going to bring to his son's life and what he wanted for his son. And I think, yeah, that's one of those moments. He's probably not going to do everything he said on that stage, but just the fact that he's there, just the fact that he's in his son's life, that's a victory in itself. That's a story. That's a moment of triumph. Hey, that's a movie. And in fact, I wish the movie makers would come and sit down with us, with you and your setter and you and your maternity home and you and your clinic and all across the board. I wish they'd sit down and make movies about what we do, about how we're unwilling to give up, on people who may have given up on themselves. Because in each of these movies, you're going to have someone who steps into the story, who believes in the person who doesn't believe in themselves anymore, who will not give up on them. In the Kurt Warner movie Underdog, where he goes from from just being an arena football player to the NFL and leading his team to a Super Bowl victory, we see in that movie a young lady who came beside him, who became his wife, who refused to give up on him, who didn't say, "This is stupid," who didn't say, "You'll never make it," who said, "I've got you, and I've got your back, and together we're going to make it." I think about the movie that we haven't even mentioned yet. I talk all about sports movies, but there's so many movies of redemption just in regular that go back to real life. And I think on my birthday, I told my boys, I said, you need to watch Apollo 13. So that was my birthday present as we watched the movie Apollo 13. Me probably for the 13th time, but them for the first time. They didn't know anything about what happened with that disaster in space. It ended up being one of our greatest moments with NASA. They had never, I mean, they knew about it, but they didn't know about it until they walked through it in that movie. And I think in that movie, you had a lot of people saying they're never going to get back. But the guys at Houston Control, and women too, they kept trying. They kept trying. And there was a stabilizing force there who would not give up. And that was Gene Kranz, who was directing, I don't know what his title was, director of the mission or whatever it was. But Gene Kranz, who continued to say, we're going to make it back. We're got to get those guys back. And then toward the end of the movie, and if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry I'm spoiling it for you, just turn the podcast off and come back in about 30 seconds. But at the end of the movie, there's a guy that says, this could be something along the lines of, this could be our greatest disaster. And he says, no, I think this could be our finest hour. Gene Kranz says that. And I think, man, that's what we need. We need more people who look in the eye of a young lady and a young man facing this situation and saying, this looks terrible, but you know what? This could be your finest hour. This could be the moment you look back on when you say everything began to come together. I began to believe in God. I began to believe in myself and what I could do. And this was the moment that turned my life around. You've already seen that. If you've worked in a life-affirming ministry for more than just a couple of years, you've seen it. You've seen those people who come back and say, I never would have wished this on anybody, but for me, it was the greatest tragic moment of my life because God used it for something amazingly good. And I think that's what we need to do. That's who we are. We're that person. We're that Gene Kranz who looks at this couple and says, you can do it. This could be your finest hour. Will we be those people? We can do all the right things. We can perform a perfect ultrasound, and I hope we do. We can adhere to all the medical standards, and I pray that we do this too. We can chart correctly. We can have the perfect setup in our office. We can have everything going our way. But there's that extra special moment when in our heart, we look that person in the eye, and in some way, some fashion, we're able to say, this could be your finest hour. That's what we do. That's what you do every day. And I can't tell you how. I can't sit here and say, because I think God does that. God puts that in us. I can't tell you, if you say this, they will. And I think that's the beauty of all these things. Because a lot of times our response at the right time is spontaneous. It's not something that's scripted out. It's not something we know, when she says this, I'll say that. It's not that. It's not that at all. But I think it's those moments when the script goes off script and we have no idea how this is going to end. But we choose to believe. We choose to believe in somebody, and we let them know, again, looking them in the eye, we let them know, I will not give up on you, and God will not give up on you either. And it's as if we're saying, look, there's this chapter of your story, is probably the toughest one that you've ever faced, maybe ever will face. I don't know. But at this moment, we're turning the page. And at this moment, the story is going to be rewritten. And you have a role in that rewriting. Your trust in God is what shares or is what puts on paper what comes next. It's your belief. It's you not giving up. It's you showing up one more day. It's you hanging in there one more day. It's interesting. Jen and I are finishing up a manuscript, and we just finished a chapter about her cancer and about going through chemotherapy and how terrible it was and what the battle was like for her. I wish she could explain it, and maybe I'll have her do that sometime. But as we went through that chapter, she says there were moments when she had no idea what to pray, what to do. But there were people in her life, in fact, one who she talks about, who sat down with her and said, hey, let's make a list of the 10 greatest advantages to being bald, because of the chemotherapy, of course. And they made this top 10 list. And they were laughing, and even in the midst of this terrible time, they were laughing. But here was somebody who said one more day, in an odd sort of way, by making a top 10 list of the advantages of being bald. And I think that's part of what we do too. Not that we try to get somebody to laugh, but whatever it takes, we're going to give them just a little bit of hope, whether through humor, whether through simply stick-to-itiveness and sitting and listening. I don't know. But we do that one thing that says, I'm still with you. I will not give up on you. I will not do it. And you don't have to give up on yourself either. It's those sorts of things, I think, that drive our ministry. If we want to know how this world out there is going to change, in this world that has lost its mind in so many ways, it's going to be more people like you who are willing to sit down with those who are hurting and say, I can see. I can see what you cannot right now. And I can see that we're about to turn the page, and this could be your finest hour. It's what we do. It's what we've been doing for more than 50 years in this ministry, and it's what we will continue to do. We are creating these moments. We are creating spaces and places where the kingdom of God can thrive. And every time you say that, every time you say, I believe in you, every time you say this in some way, form, or fashion, this could be your finest hour. When you do that, the kingdom of God takes a little more ground from the enemy, just a little bit. It's like we're establishing a beachhead on the enemy's ground. If we want to turn this into a war scenario or something, it's as if we're landing on Normandy beaches and we're taking just a little bit of ground by saying, I believe in you. This could be your finest hour. And then, as we stay in there with her, as we stick with her and him, we take a little more ground and a little more ground to where one day the kingdom of God can take root in their lives. It's what we do. As we close today, I don't have a lot to say except I encourage you to keep at it, to see those who come in the door and say, you know what, this can be your finest hour, to keep trying, to let them know you believe in them. And you know, one day, I don't know, I've mentioned this on the pod before, I don't know exactly what the kingdom of God is going to be like. God bless those who know so much better than me, but I just don't know. But I wonder if we're going to see those moments in our lives and how we stepped into the stories of other people. And maybe the Lord somehow shows us a picture of the movie we helped to write. I don't know. But I think maybe that's something that's going to go with me as I step into other people's stories throughout my life, as I visit with people. Maybe this is their movie, and I'm playing a small role, so that even in the tough times, it can be their finest hour. Hey, thanks for listening. We'll look forward to seeing you next time on Coffee with Kirk with the Pregnancy Help Podcast.